the Mimer was talking about up till now, about how a person makes Shem Yudke Vavke come into the creation. Prior, at the beginning of creation, it's Bereshis Bara Elokim. But Shem Havaya does not come in. When a Yid does his avoida, through his avoida, he influences and creates that there should be the Shem Havaya, Shem Yudke Vavke, should come into the creation. And we said that in general, that a Yid, when we say Dam Mamal Mailam Imach, the word that Alter Rebbe always used to quote from the Mezritcher Magi, that he said, know that what is above comes from you. So first of all, he says, everything that's above comes from the Yid. That's the expression. And secondly, that we said from the continuation of it, it seems to be, from the general concept, the way he speaks about it over there, it seems to be that when he talks about that what we do affects above, it means that it affects above retroactively. That even things that we're doing now will affect retroactively by Hashem whatever is accomplished over there. Based on that, we can understand how our avodah affects the Shem Yudke Vavke all the way at the beginning of the creation, even though we weren't present, we weren't doing our avodah yet. So let's go to 3 lines from the bottom of the first page. In a similar vein, we could say, based on what he said, that the avodah of a Yid affects above, so too, and it affects above retroactively, so too, God, we could say in our case that we're talking about Shem Yudke Vavke in the creation. We also said that this is the idea that a person becomes a partner to Hashem in creation. This idea that he brings Hashem Havaya into the creation, that we're bringing Shem Yudke Vavke into the creation. So that is the concept of the same idea of bringing of shutaf, that he becomes a partner to Hashem. What does that mean practically? Left to the creation from Hashem's perspective, without our avodah, what is recognizable primarily is that the whole creation of the world is through the name Elokim. Through the Yidden partnering, like we said, that a Yid, through doing Torah mitzvahs, becomes a partner to Hashem in the creation. So they are now partners in something that seemingly happened thousands of years ago, 5,786 years ago. Nimshach Shem Havaya Ba'briya Oid Koidem, top of 416 Havoidam. So now this affects that the Shem Yudke Vavke comes down into the creation even before they did the avodah, by the avodah that they're doing now. And the Rebbe adds to this, we can add to this according to the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. That was brought down and explained at length in Shari Yichud Ve'emunah, in Tanya at the beginning of Shari Yichud Ve'emunah. Sha'koyach Elikim Mahav Machayim Makayim Miskol Oil Miskulo. That the godly power brings into being and gives life and makes the world exist, and all the worlds exist every moment. From total nothingness, just like the first time around, just like he did almost 6,000 years ago. Move on Yoiser, so that's even more understood. How our actions and service throughout the 6,000 years that the world existed, they draw down the name Yudke Vavke in the creation. Since the creation is in every single moment. So the Rebbe is saying from 2 perspectives. One perspective is that you didn't have the power to retroactively influence what took place in the past. that when a Yid does something, he becomes a partner to Hashem's creation, to add the Shem Havaya in the beginning of the creation. But in addition to that, since creation is ongoing, so therefore, we are, with our present avodah, we are every single moment contributing to the ongoing creation, bringing the Shem Havaya in the ongoing creation. So what is the significance of this Gilui of Shem Havaya? So he's going to connect it with this, with what we're going to read as Shabbos Parshas Zocher. It's known, it's known that Amalek was about the separation and the cutting off between the name Yudke of Shem Havaya and the Vavke, the letters Vavke. We know that Yudke goes on the level of Chachma and Bina, the level of intellect. Vavke goes on the Midas, as we'll explain and talk about later on in the Maimer. Where do we see that Amalek was about the separation between them? Like it says, Ki Yod al Kes Yudke, that Hashem swears by his throne. He placed his hand on the throne of Yudke to swear, to take an oath. Milchama lavaya b'Amalek. It's a milchama of Yudke Vavke against Amalek. So why does it say al Kes Yudke? Why doesn't it say al Kisei Havaya? So the Chazal say ki the Ein Hashem Sholem ad sheyichle zari shel Amalek. Hashem's name is incomplete because it's the separation between Yudke and Vavke. And that's why Shem Havaya is battling against Amalek to reunite, or the battle against Amalek is to reunite the Yudke and the Vavke. Hainu Amalek menagid l'Shem Havaya. Amalek opposes the name Yudke Vavke, which we said our job is to draw down the Yudke Vavke in the creation. The Yudke Vavke, he wants to cause the separation to Yudke and Vavke. The content of the avodah of the war of Amalek is to join the Yudke with the Vavke. That's the connection of the idea of drawing down the name Yudke Vavke to the miracle of Purim, specifically that we're saying that Amalek not just Amalek is the precursor to Purim, but we said Megillah Nekras b'Yud Aleph and b'Tesvav. Yud Aleph, we said that's the numerical equivalent of Vavke, and Tesvav, that's the numerical equivalent of Yudke. So he said the Shalchein Megillah Nekras b'Yud Aleph b'Tesvav Cholum ki zeh hayagam in Yonah Shal Hamam zer Amalek, because Haman, who was the offspring of Amalek, the descendants of Amalek, he continued in his forefathers' steps, and he was battling against the name Yudke Vavke. How does one repair this? Through joining the letters, the Vavke of Yudke and Yudke of Shem Yudke Vavke. This avodah is also unique in the time of exile, or specific to the time of exile. There, in the time of Golus, are to be found those that are following in the footsteps of Haman, meaning that those that hate the Yidden and want to destroy the Yidden. Like the Haggadah states, in every single generation, they stand and rise against us to destroy us. And Hashem saves us from their hands. And to be able to fight the war of Havai and Amalek, it's by joining the Yudke Vavke and the Yudke Vavke together, right? The Chibur Vavke and Yudke Shem Havai, through joining the Vavke with the Yudke of Shem Havai. The idea behind this is the idea of the separation between the Yudke and Vavke in the soul of a person. Lemidois umaisa. It's the separation and division between what we contemplate and think in our brain to the emotions, and therefore, by extension, also the world of action. Because as we said before, Yud K is the level of intellect, Chachma and Bina, and Vav K is the level of emotions. Also, Hey goes on the level of Malchus, has to do with Machshava Dibur Maisa, has to do with action. The Amolik, Meloshin, Molak. The word Amolik is from the same word, or it's related to phonetically and from the letters with the word Molak. When the Kohen separated and when there was birds offered in the Beis Hamikdash, so then they separated the neck by something called Malika, by the nail of the thumb of the Kohen Gadol that was put to the neck, and that separated the head from the body. That separates the head from the body. That's the idea of Amolik, the separation. Chasar b'maisa adam, when the head is removed from the rest of the body, so there's lacking in the actions of the person. And it's also lacking in the avodah of his emotions. This causes when there's this disconnect between the person's intellect and his action and his emotions, so that interferes and doesn't allow that Yud Kei Vav Kei should come into the world, which is what the Yidden's job is. They're supposed to add that into the world, etc. What is the avodah to repair this? Is that through a person doing his avodah in such a manner, that from the intellect in his head also comes down in his specific powers. In other words, it shouldn't just remain intellectual, it should express itself in his other soul powers. So I like to explain that length in this form of the Mittler Rebbe. Hein b'negia l'hizbonenus v'hein b'negia l'kavanos hamitzvos. Both concerning general contemplation about Hashem, and also concerning the intention of the mitzvahs. She'einem maspik inyan ha'izbonenus ha'klolis v'ha'kavana ha'klolis. It's insufficient just having the general meditation and the general intention of the mitzvahs. We need to bring down the general into the detail. Also a specific meditation that brings to action. One of the examples of this is that when a person contemplates on the greatness of Hashem, etc., he has to also translate it to a particular thing, and therefore that will bring me to have a love of Hashem instead of a love for physical things. That will bring me to an awe of Hashem instead of having fear or running after physical things, etc. There needs to be a detailed type of application of this. And also, similarly, also specific intention in the action of Torah and the mitzvahs. Another thing that's pointed out that's necessary, there also has to be the intellect of das. The idea of das is like explained in Tanya. That he needs to stake his thought in strength. In other words, that instead of just understanding something intellectually, he needs to really insert and invest that idea into himself and himself into that concept. And only then can one make the connection between the intellect and the emotions. But if a person doesn't have the level of das, so then there's a disconnect. He knows it intellectually, but it doesn't affect him emotionally. Like it's explained at length in the Mamarim the Tzemach Tzedek. In Chabad, in the Nesir Chabad, when we speak about the first three Rabbeim, it's brought down that the Alter Rebbe was Chachma, the Mittler Rebbe, with his broad, expansive, detailed type of Amorim that were very long, That was the level of Bina, and the Tzemach Tzedek was the level of Das. So the Tzemach Tzedek, whose level of the three Rabbeim, of the first three Rabbeim of Chabad was the level of Das, he also explains the Teuchen Milchemes HaMolek, Hu HaMelchama Neged HaFroda Bein HaMoyach VaMidas. The war that we need to battle against Amalek is to battle that which wants to separate the Moyach versus Midas and Maisa. And what performs that war? What ensures that there should not be that separation? Das. Das is the one that joins them together, that ensures there shouldn't be that separation. And the Rebbe says that one of the famous questions that's brought down on Parshas Zachor is, why does it say Bechar Lono Anoshim? Why does it say choose for us men? Just tell Yeshua, go ahead and fight the war. He says, this is also the reason that Moshe Rabbeinu said, choose for us men, for our men, for us. What does that mean? Anshe Moshe, people, men of Moshe. The Moshe Bechinas Adas, because Moshe was a level of Das. Only through the level of Das can we fight the war and defeat in the war against Amalek, to join the Vavke with the Yudke together. That is done, that is accomplished through the level of Das, which Moshe has brought down Chassidus, corresponds to Das. Third page of the Maimer, 417. Shleimus talking to Milchemes Amalek, the perfection of this victory of the war against Amalek will be when Mashiach comes. Mashiach, like it says, a battle and a war of Hashem and Amalek from one generation to another generation. What does that mean, generation to generation? Before become Mekaimis, like it's brought down many places. Generation, Kol, the Mashiach includes the generation of the heels of Mashiach. That's also the first generation of the redemption. The perfection of this war will be in the future. That I will surely erase the memory of Amalek. That's referring to the future time, with Mashiach's times, then Hashem will do the ultimate eradication. This is what it says, that the Megillah is read on the 11th of Adar, the 15th. On the day of Purim, we read the Megillah. And the Megillah is about, I think he's playing off the word Megillah from the word Gilui. It's a revelation of the name Yudke Vavke. Through this reading is also indicating that you read something out loud, you proclaim. We are proclaiming the name Yudke Vavke in the entire chain order of descent. Though the reading of the Megillah is considered like a temporary thing, like it's brought on Mamadim, the difference between the term when Chazal used the word Megillah versus the word Sefer. Sefer ukeva. Sefer, a book, shows that it's something that's established, that it's set, it's going to be for all time. And Megillah is something that is a temporary type of thing. You don't usually use a Megillah for an ongoing thing. So perhaps that means that the Shem Havai is not drawn down. It's not because that the Shem Havai is somehow weak, it doesn't last that long. But just the opposite. The separation between the Yudke and the Vavke is only applicable now, as opposed to the future time when Mashiach comes. When Mashiach comes, Yudke and Vavke will finally be joined together. The name will be complete, the throne will be complete. Then they will not need that avoid anymore. That's why it's called a Megillah, which Megillah shows that it's temporary. Now he's going to challenge what we know. The whole idea of Purim is always going to last. Onam Afal became still no a pasuk Rambam lalocha. The Rambam ruled lalocha. The after Chol HaMoedim B'Teilim, though all the Yom Tovim will cease when Mashiach comes. Harei Mea Purim Ein B'Teilim. The days of Purim will not cease. V'gam Megillah says to Tir comes L'Asalavik My Torah Shebeksav V'Loch Shebetoira. And Megillah says will exist in the future, just like the Chamisha Chumshei Torah and Torah Shabbat Peh. ומזה מובן שגם במגילה יש לעניין של קבע הנגיע לכל סדר השתלשלות וכל הזמנים. It's understood that Megillah is something that is set and established that matters for the entire chain order of descent in all times, not just now when we need a Badal Amalek and when Mashiach comes, that when Yud Kei Vav Kei is joined together, we won't need it anymore. It's not that way. Shleimer, the Rebbe says, the answer to this is, Zeh ma she'avodas Purim b'ofen da'ad lo yada. The avoid of Purim is going beyond knowledge. That's the level of knowledge, that's the level of Seichel, has to do with Atzilus, has to do with Chabad. Beyond knowledge, that's the level of Keser. Keser is established and everlasting, and it has no changes, and therefore it lasts even when Mashiach comes. This is also what the Rambam brings over there, where it says in the pasuk, "V'zichram liyosem mizaram," that their memory will not cease from their children. Shezaroim is lazman dulasid lavi. She'oz yegamkin inyan shel zarim ktanim. That since the times of Mashiach's times, then there will also be their children, which shows us on minors. They will all know me from their most minor to the greatest. That shows that there will be minors when Mashiach comes. Yet, even though there will be minors, one man shall not teach his fellow. Because when you're dealing with a level, it's beyond knowledge. The idea of study does not apply. Why is that so? The joy of Purim, in a way of not even knowing that it's something beyond knowledge. Just another few lines. That's beyond measure. It's even greater than the joy of Yom Tovim. That has to be for joy. Over there, there's limitations, like we mentioned in the previous mimer. As opposed to the joy of Purim, there are no limitations. The joy of Purim is higher than the general idea of joy that Torah establishes. We could say the reason why the joy of Purim is higher than the joy that Torah prescribes is Purim is in the joy of Purim is revealed in the Yidden, the level of Yidden and Hashem are entirely one. That's higher even than Torah. Okay, do abir b'maimer azor, like it's known the explanation in the statement of the Zohar. That three bonds are connected one to the other, Yidden and the Torah and Torah and Hashem. If so, so there's only two bonds. The link between Yidden and the Torah, and the link between the Torah and Hashem. Why does it say three bonds and three knots? Afterwards, it's like a triangle. There's the joining of a third bond of the Yidden being joined with Hashem, and from this comes down into the Torah. The Kesher is at the top of the last page. The bond of Yidden and Hashem that's beyond Torah becomes revealed in the joy of Purim. But in the joy of Purim. But still, it has to go through Torah. The revelation of this, when he learns the halacha, there has to be ad lo yada. And the study in Torah is everlasting. And the greatness of studies that brings to action. So that becomes actuality within a soul, that it reaches to the level beyond knowledge. Moving from this understood. The true idea of ad lo yada b'chinas hakeser is the level of keser. Or the keser gufa b'chinas pnimis hakeser. And keser itself, the inner level of keser. It's established and set and everlasting without changes. The revelation, the perfection of these matters will be When Mashiach comes, it's explained in many places, based on what it says in the Pri Etz Chaim, all revelations now are from the external level of Atik. The revelation of the inner level of Atik. Mashiach comes of Gulam Mitzvah Shlema because of Mamish, the true and complete redemption, and soon Mamish.